Would you open your Bibles this morning to Genesis chapter 49? And Eric, if you can give me a little bit more bass and less tread here. I want to talk to you about the war and the promise of victory. Every one of us are involved in a war. At some point in time, really, every one of us have the place where we can battle for promises, where we can stand for promises. And I want to give you the story of fathers that battle for sons. How many of you have some sons that, or daughters perhaps, that they're not fully walking in the promises that you know that God has prophesied over them? In fact, my wife and I still have CDs of our kids going to camp, and they would prophesy over them, and they would put them on a CD. And sometimes it's harder to, you forget those CDs, and those are prophetic words that we need to take and start saying, God, I'm going to believe this rather than this. Then you'll see the story of sons that really, so fathers and family throw away the promises that they were given. I grew up in that type of environment. My parents we were not even, I think we all had a call for the gospel, but we were as lost as we could be. And my parents, I loved them. I led them to the Lord before they died. But boy, we sure threw away a lot of years. How many of you can identify with some of that maybe? Okay. Now look at this scripture, because I want you to think about 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 18. This is what it says, and just stay in Genesis 49. But I want you to look at how Paul instructs Timothy to think about the promises that were given to him at some point in time in his life. Christian, can I have 1 Timothy? This is what it says. This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you. Here's what he says. Timothy, I want you to pay close attention to all the prophecies, all the promises, all the prayers that were given to you. Why would you want to focus on the promises and the prophetic words? Because for them to come to pass, he's going to have to step into the battleground and believe God for the breakthrough of those. Here's what he says. That by them you fight the good fight, keeping faith and a good conscience. Here's what Paul says to Timothy. Timothy, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take, I'm paraphrasing, I want you to take all the prophecies, all the promises, all the prophetic prayers that were given to you, and I want you to take them, and by these promises, I want you to fight the good fight. Here's the two things I want you to do. I want you to keep your faith strong and keep your conscience clean. The rest of the verse 19 says it this way. Some people have neglected those things and shipwrecked their own faith. So here's what I want you to think about. How many prayers have you prayed over children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever it is, that have not yet come to pass? Genesis chapter 49 is the story of Jacob. And I want you to look with me at verse 5 through 7. Because these are the prayers that Jacob is praying over his sons before he dies. Now, these are not good prayers, I think, but he's praying them as destiny for these two sons. I want you to look with me at verse 5. This is Jacob praying. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are implements of violence. That's not a good goodbye prayer, is it? Let my soul not enter into their counsel. Let not my glory be united with their assembly. Because in their anger they slew men, and in their self-will they lamed oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and the wrath, for it is cruel. I am going to disperse them in Jacob and scatter them all over Israel. I don't know about you, but if someone's praying that way for me, I kind of would just get depressed. Wouldn't you? There's no future in this prayer. Jacob is taking his 12 sons. Think about how powerful this is. Jacob is taking his 12 sons and starts praying over all of them. And when he comes to Levi and Simeon, he curses their anger. He says, look, you've been nothing but instruments of pain in your life. So you will be cursed. Your anger is cursed. I'm going to disperse you. There's no promise. There's no future for Simeon and Levi. Oh, but the power of a great-grandfather has more power than the curse that's ever been pronounced on this young man. Go with me to Hebrews chapter 7, because I want you to get a glimpse of this. Because would you agree that Levi's anger is cursed? 2 amens. All right. Look with me at Hebrews chapter 7, because Abraham is given a promise as a great-grandfather over this child when the child is not even born yet. Now let me put this in context. Abraham himself is barren. His wife Sarah is laughing at God that she's going to have children. And God promises Abraham not only to have kids, but think about it. He says they're going to be as big as the stars and as the sand of the sea. That's a lot of kids when your equipment's not even working. And now you have a grandson that's cursing a great-grandson. Do the math on that. And if you can figure it out, let me know. Look at Hebrews chapter 7. Now, I want to just pick up, if you would, in verse 4. Now observe how great this man was, to whom Abraham, the patriarch, gave a tenth of his choice spoils. Let me just put this into its context. Abraham's nephew, how many of you remember his little nephew? Lot. That dude took the best piece of land. And what he started calling as paradise ended up turning into Sodom and Gomorrah. Which tells me that sometimes choosing after your own self is not really the best choice. But here's what happens. They kidnap Lot. Abraham raises 250 soldiers, I think it was, or 230, and goes out and defeats 4 armies of kings and rescues Lot. On the way back from the battleground, he meets Melchizedek. He has no clue who Melchizedek is. He's ready to fight him. Read that in Genesis 14. He's ready to go and get into the battle with him. He's already put down 4 kings. He'll put down another king. But when he meets Melchizedek, something happens to him. He realizes that Melchizedek is bigger and greater than all the armies he's met. In fact, Hebrews chapter 7 calls it, he was a priest with no beginning, no end. It's a picture of Jesus. And here's what Abraham does. In that battlefield, verse 4, he observed how great this man was. Verse 5, and indeed the sons of Levi who received the priest office have commandment in the law to collect a tenth of the people. Now wait a minute. Levi is already cursed. How can he become a priest? Think through that. Because here is what Abraham does. Verse 9. And so to speak, through Abraham, even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes, for he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Now do the math. Just work with me for just a second, because you're looking at me like, what in the world am I saying? I see your faces. Abraham just battled 4 kings. He meets Melchizedek, and the spoils of these 4 kings he takes and he pays tithes to Melchizedek. In his tithe, he tithes Levi's tithe, and Levi receives the tithe. But wait a minute. At this point in time, in Genesis chapter 14, Abraham doesn't have any kids. He's barren. But look what he does. He transcends time by the promise of Melchizedek. Think about this. So here's Abraham. He has to have Isaac, would you agree? In order to have Jacob. Then Isaac has Jacob, and then Jacob has Simeon and Levi. So are you telling me that before Abraham could have children, he was already interceding for the great-grandson that was cursed? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And that's exactly what I'm saying to you. Do not give up on the promises that God has made to your children or prophetic words to your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, because if Abraham, who is the father of our faith, can come and start prophesying life to Levi when he was already being cursed and lifts the curse, so can you, because you have the name of Jesus living inside of you. Amen. Abraham not only, don't ask me how he did it, how God did it. I've asked for the details. Don't have the details. All I can tell you is that right here, Jacob cursed Levi. Right here, Abraham blessed Levi. Right here, Abraham received money from the spoils from the kings and paid it to Melchizedek and even offered it for Levi when he was not even born. Could it be possible that Abraham was looking after all the generations that would come after him? Could it be possible that sometimes we let go of the promises because we don't see what's working or not working? Listen, I have grandkids, and they will one day get married. I'm already praying for their wives. Here's the crazy thing about this story is that a great-grandfather not only has the power to lift the curse from Simeon and Levi, but think about this. The moment they crossed the Red Sea, if you read this in 1 Samuel, Numbers chapter 18 and 16, Aaron says to Moses, hey Moses, now that we've crossed the Red Sea, why don't you give me Levi for the sanctuary? And I want to make this deal with you. Read the story. Not only will he be a priest, but he will be the one that carries the Ark of the Covenant. The Levites were the only ones allowed to carry the Ark of the Covenant. How can a cursed great-grandson be carrying the presence of the Holy God? I'm going to tell you why. Because a great-grandfather never let go of the promises of the great God of all creation that said, you and your descendants will be blessed. And Abraham would not have it, one of his kids or great-grandkids be cursed because of anger or whatever it was. So you cannot do that either. How many of you have kids or grandkids or great-grandkids that are just not fully walking in the fullness of the promise? It's easier sometimes to let go and say, God, I don't know what to do anymore. Let me tell you what you need to do. Stand where Abraham stood. The story would have been a little bit easier to understand if Abraham had already had Isaac and Jacob and he was praying for the 12 boys that Jacob had. But at that point in time, Abraham couldn't even have kids. So how do you pray for breakthrough for someone when you don't even have breakthrough yourself? How do you pray for blessings of kids when your wife is saying to God, we cannot have kids, we're old? How can you do that when God waits 25 years for Abraham to receive the son? He was 75, he had the first child at 100. I don't know about you. That's a long time. I'm not in my hundreds, but I surely don't want any more any children. I'll have as many grandchildren as they can give me. But you see, he never gave up on the promise. Here's the question I would ask. What if Abraham did not wage war for a great-grandson? The curse would have stayed on that great-grandson. And I'm encouraging you to think about your family, your descendants, the future. Some of you have children that perhaps not even been born. And I'm saying to you, don't forget about the future. And sometimes the reason we forget about the future is because we look at our own selves and we say, well, I don't even have kids. Well, join Abraham. He didn't have kids. He could not have kids. Can I get one amen? Amen. Go with me to Numbers chapter 16, if you would. What if Abraham did not battle for the next generation? I think maybe the future of those kids would not have been the same. And I think if you think of Levi, what a privilege that one day you were cursed, the next day you're carrying the presence of God. Isn't that a picture of you and me? One day we were lost as lost can be, and today we're carrying the presence of God. Somebody was praying for you and I. Somebody's been interceding. In fact, the Bible even speaks in Hebrews 7 that even Jesus stands at the right hand of the Father making intercession for you. And we've got to yield to the power of intercession from God. Because he sees the end from the beginning. He knows what you're going through. He knows what you're going to go through. And he knows how to manifest his presence. Sometimes we get too focused on our current state and we stop fighting the good fight. Remember, he says, fight the good fight, keep your faith strong, and keep your conscience clean. Now, let me tell you the story of a son who recovered the promises that his father threw away. This son is not one son, it's all his sons. They got together. Look with me at Numbers chapter 16. I want you to look at two verses. Verse 3. Let me just give you a background on the story. Korah, Dathan, Abiram have risen against Moses. In fact, it was 250 chosen men got up and said to Moses, hey, you've gone too far. Look with me at verse 3. And they assembled together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, you've gone too far enough. For the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? Verse 4. When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. How would you like to be pastoring these dudes? You've carried them out of the land of Egypt. You're providing miracles every single day. And then one day, 250 of the choice assembly, along with Korah, Dathan, they get up and say, we've had enough of you. Everyone here is holy but you. Moses is probably brokenhearted. Here is what you have to see. That Korah, out of any of the leaders that Moses had one of the greatest callings in his life. He, remember, this is Old Testament. He was called to be near to God more than anybody. And he threw that away because he got upset with Moses. Look with me at verse 9. Is it not enough for you, this is Moses talking to Korah, is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation and minister to them? He has brought you near, Korah and all your brothers, your sons of Levi, with you, and you're seeking the priesthood also? Korah was not satisfied with what he had, so he threw it away. And throwing it away, he threw away the future of his children. Can I get one amen? I know this is probably not a good wake-up sermon, but it is a sermon that you need to battle for and with, because it will give you the power to recover promises. So you know what? You know the story. Moses says, hey, everybody get away from the tents of Korah, because tomorrow God's going to do a new thing. If you read with me at verse 32, it's not a good verse, but Moses tells everybody, hey, you guys stay away from the tents of Korah. What happened? Verse 32, and the ground opened up and swallowed them all up. Did it not? Think about it. And then on the next verse it says, and the fire of the Lord came and consumed the 250 people with their censers. I don't know about you, but that was a bad day in Israel. So what do you do if you are the son of Korah? It's interesting because in this scripture, the sons of Korah did not die. I find it amazing that God can bypass the sins of a father and give their sons a chance to recover what their father lost. And I know that this is a sensitive subject, because I know that people grow up in abusive homes. I know that things happen, and I understand that. But you can choose to let go of that trauma and abuse and believe God for the promises that belong to your name and your generation and the generations that are to come, and start bringing the past and the future together so that God can bring the miracles to your household. I want you to look with me. Here's Korah. He's done. He's toast. Go with me to Psalms 46. I want you to read this with your own eyes. Now, if you have an electronic Bible, anybody has an electronic Bible? Lillian. Tell me, does it say who wrote this song in Psalms 46? Think about this. Because these sons, whose father threw away their destiny, recovered what their father threw away, and bridged the past with the future, because they stood in the gap of God's promise. Psalms 46 should say that it was, does it say who? How did they write the song? How could they write the psalm when their father was throwing away their future? I'm going to tell you, they recovered what their father threw away. I don't have time this morning, but the sons of Korah wrote 11 of some of the most beautiful psalms you'll ever read in the Bible. They saw their father and his tents go down to the earth. They saw their friends, the fire of God coming and consuming them. But if you read Psalms 45, don't go there. If you read Psalms 45, verse 16, they wrote this psalm, and it says, in the place of your fathers will be your sons, and you shall make them princesses in all the earth. Can you imagine calling yourself a prince when your dad threw away your destiny? I'm going to tell you, yes. Because in the beloved, you can recover things that have been lost in your family. In fact, they go on to write this beautiful song that you and I probably know it by heart. Verse 1 of chapter 46. Look what he says. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, I will not fear, though the earth should change. Did the earth change in front of them when it swallowed up their dad? Someone help me. Though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, did they kind of have a revelation of this? Verse 3. Though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake in its swelling pride. They got the picture. They dealt with the problem of their father's negligence. Not only that, but they dealt with the trauma. I don't know about you, but I don't know. Can you imagine you being the sons of Korah and you see your dad, your whole family going, I don't know, I would have to have Sosa for the rest of my life or LOL or it would be traumatizing. Wouldn't you agree? Here's what they say. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of my God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High. God is in her midst, and she will not be moved. It seems to me that the sons of Korah are no longer affected by the sins of their father. Go with me to chapter 84. It's even better. Look who wrote this psalm. If you have an electronic Bible, I'm just teasing you, you know that. It should say that it was written by the sons of Korah. I'm not going to tell you all the Psalms, but it would be a good thing for you to read the 11 Psalms that the sons of Korah wrote. You know what they did? It's interesting when you read Psalms 84, verse 6 and 7. It says it this way. The sons of Korah turned the valley of Baca. The valley of Baca, it should have a little asterisk there, and it should say the valley of tears. And they probably lamented seeing their parents be swallowed up. But here's what they said. They turned the valley of Baca into what? Into a spring. That means that they were able to take the losses of their parents, turn the trauma of tears into springs of life. And look how the verse finishes. And they go how? From strength to strength. Here is a group of sons that recovered the promises that their father threw away. Here is a great-grandfather that prayed for the blessings of a son, great-grandson that was not even born. Well, you may say, this is all fishy and I don't understand it. That's why Paul says, look, fight the good faith and fight the good fight and keep faith and clean conscience. Because the stuff we're talking about is supernatural. The stuff we're talking about is the presence of God. The stuff we're talking about, only God can do. You and I cannot do it in our own strength. So, let me close with this. Because if a great-grandfather can recover the promises for a great-grandson, and a son can recover the calling of Korah, you can do the same. Because we have someone greater than they had. In fact, Jesus said it this way, truly I say to you, among those born of women, there's never arisen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet he who is the least in the kingdom of God, that's you and me, is greater than he. Because from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. I taught on this last week, I think it was. He made a contrast between one generation that was able to offer and battle for the promises and a generation that were just children that were sitting, waiting to dance or not receive the promises. So look at this scripture, Hebrews chapter 6. This is how you do it. We desire that each one of you show the same diligence. This is the great-grandpa that lifted the curse of the great-grandson. This is what he writes. He says, we desire that each one of you show the same diligence so as to realize the full assurance of hope until the end. Well, how do you have hope when you cannot have kids? But you're praying for the great-grandkid that's not even born. How in the world does that even work? It works through faith. Look what it says. So that you be not sluggish, but imitators of those who through faith and patience do what? Boy, that's the difficult one. Because you have to have patience. And we lived in a microwave culture. Would you agree with that? I want my miracle today. And God does that. But sometimes He wants you to develop faith and patience. And sometimes I don't really want faith and patience. I just want it now. It's interesting because verse 15 says, having patiently waited, he obtained the promise. He waited 25 years for the first child. In the process of waiting, he made some of the biggest messes. You remember he tried to help God and had a child with Hagar, and then he kicked her out, and then Ishmael was thrown out, and then Isaac started battling with Ishmael. Then, can you imagine that family? Kind of looks like some of our families. That's why God writes this stuff. He's not embarrassed to show us that God can turn the biggest messes into the greatest miracles if we're willing to believe for the future in the things that we cannot see. But here's the question that we must ask ourselves. Will you stand with the generation of John the Baptist, was able to offer violence to receive and inherit the promises? Or will you be compared to a generation that sits and says, we didn't dance to your song. We didn't mourn to your dirge. In fact, they've become more critical than anything. Or will you believe God for the future of your generations to come? Well, you may say, we may not even be here. Well, that's fine. Pray for them anyway. Because you and I don't know the day, the hour, the time, do we? Can you imagine if Abraham prayed because, well, we don't have enough time. I'm 75. And I don't know, if I was Abraham at 75 to start believing for kids. How many of you 75 still believing for kids? All right. That's fine. Tim is raising his hand back there. Think about the magnitude of God's goodness to us. That a great-grandfather can pray and lift the curse of a great-grandchild that's not even born yet. Or a son who has seen his father be swallowed up on the earth can recover the calling of his father and write 11 of the most beautiful psalms you'll ever read in the Bible. Would you stand with me? I'm telling you that as a father, as a mom, great-grandfather, whatever it is, believe God for the future of your family. Well, but you don't know, I grew up in a real messed out home. So did the sons of Korah, and they ended up being the priests of the kingdom that wrote the Psalms of God's presence. So, Father, I pray that this day there'll be testimonies recovered. There'd be sons and daughters and great-grandchildren and grandchildren that receive the blessings of what we're doing today. Or maybe there's sons that need to recover the testimony of something tragic that happened with their parents. Father, I pray for blessings in this battlefield, that you move supernaturally to heal homes, to make us warriors for your promises. That whether we're seeing sicknesses or whatever it is, God, today we stand against those things and we prophesy life to every circumstance.